A sharp, resounding crack tore through the opulence of the Gala. Smack! Eleanor Rothel's hand struck across Maya Lane Williams's face, leaving a blazing red mark on her delicate skin, like a stain across the glittering evening. The whispers turned into gasps, then into a storm. 200 aristocratic guests, instead of intervening, or raised their phones, gleefully recording the scene as though it were an unscripted act of entertainment. Maya, in a simple black dress, stood motionless. Her heart pounded in her chest, but her eyes remained calm, steady. Why? The question echoed inside her, but her lips stayed sealed. A suffocating silence lingered. Then the Rothel family descended on her like wolves, emboldened by the scent of blood. James Rothel Jr., heir to the dynasty, seized her scarf and yanked hard. Maya lost her balance, stumbling into the dessert table. The towering mousse collapsed, chocolate smeared across her dress. Caviar splattered across the cold marble floor. The mousse dripped thick and heavy down her hands, each drop cutting at her dignity like a blade. Victoria Rothel Sterling, regal in demeanor, wasted no chance to humiliate. She kicked Maya's handbag, scattering its contents: an old phone, a worn lipstick, a few crumpled tissues. "Look at this!" Victoria shrilled into her phone camera, her tone dripping with theatrics for the millions watching live. A cheap knockoff bag, an imposter through and through. Behind her, Senator Charles Rothel, silver hair gleaming beneath the chandelier, silver cane in hand like a scepter, jabbed his finger at Maya's chest. "Security! Throw this creature out at once!" He did not call her a woman, not even a person, but a creature. A word meant to strip away humanity itself. The crowd buzzed. Some sneered. Others live-streamed, their comments flooding with flames and laughing emojis. To them, Maya was nothing more than an intruder exposed among Manhattan's most powerful. Yet even as she was surrounded, Maya did not scream, did not argue. Her silence only made the Rothels bolder. "James, call security now," Eleanor commanded, her Cartier bracelet glittering under the flashing lights. James Jr. lifted his phone, not just to make the call, but to snap photos. Click, click. Each shot like evidence for a conviction. "That's the kind of discount dress you find in bargain bins. It's not worth even a week of my tax bill." His words stabbed like daggers, rubbing salt into the wound of humiliation. Victoria chimed in, her voice sweet but dripping with venom. "Everyone, we're live-streaming the capture of a fraud in real time. I can almost smell the desperation on her." The line set off a wave of laughter, the online chat exploding in cruel delight. At the center of the circle, Maya clutched her small bag tighter. She pulled out tissues to wipe the chocolate from her dress. And as the bag opened, for a fleeting second, a few things were revealed. A titanium credit card glinting in silver, the corner of a business-class ticket from JFK to Dubai, and her phone screen flashing with dozens of messages from Bloomberg and Reuters, alongside 87 missed calls. The only one to notice was the head of security, a former NYPD officer. His eyes narrowed, catching the glimpse, though too far to read the name on the ticket. He sensed something was wrong, but Eleanor pressed harder. "Remove her now, before the auction begins." Maya glanced at her watch. 10 minutes remained before the gavel fell at the auction. And in that moment, though smeared with chocolate and insulted before the world, she stood tall, unbowed. The Rothels thought they had won. They had no idea that this moment was the first step toward a downfall that would shake New York. For the woman they mocked was not just an intruder. She was the one holding the power to wipe out their empire with a single touch of her screen. Chuckles mingled with the constant clicks of cameras echoing through the grand hall of the museum. Flash after flash lit up the room, turning the opulence of the Met Gala into a public arena with Maya at its center, the target of mockery. Victoria Rothel Sterling turned to the side, holding her phone aloft, her voice dripping with feigned excitement. "Everyone, we are live, streaming something unbelievable. An intruder at the Met Gala. That's right, an intruder." Her phone screen lit up as the numbers surged. 25,000 viewers, then 30,000, then 45,000 within minutes. Thousands of comments poured in like a flood. "OMG, she looks so pathetic. Throw her out. Check her bag. She's definitely hiding something stolen. Who let this thing into the Met Gala?" The insults grew harsher, laced with racist slurs, but Victoria didn't bother hiding them. She smiled, decorating the feed with fiery emojis, steering the storm of outrage like a conductor. Maya stood still, wiping chocolate from her hands with a cheap tissue. Her composure was twisted into labels of defiance and shamelessness. Eleanor Rothel stepped forward, her eyes glittering with power, her voice sharp as steel. "James, have you called security yet? Don't let her stain our family's honor any further." James Jr. smirked, lifting his phone proudly. "Mother, I already called, and I've taken plenty of pictures. These will be sent to every security firm in Manhattan. Once the word spreads, this girl will never find work in this city again, if she ever had any to lose." The crowd erupted in laughter. The sound cracked beneath the high dome like whips across dignity. At the edge of the room, the head of security, a former NYPD captain, stepped closer. He had seen it all: art theft, celebrity meltdowns, violent brawls. But what he saw unsettled him. Something was wrong. This woman didn't look like a thief or an interloper. Her hands trembled faintly as she wiped her dress, but her eyes were unnervingly calm. "Ladies and gentlemen, the auction will close in 10 minutes. The chair's voice boomed from the speakers. The tension drew tighter. Eleanor turned sharply toward the head of security. "You know who I am. I've sat on this museum's board for 30 years. So what are you waiting for? Remove her before this gets dirtier." Victoria swung her phone back to her mother, her tone theatrical. "You all hear that? This is real power. One word, one look, and an intruder disappears from this building. Isn't that perfection?" The viewer count surged again. 60,000, 70,000. Comments raged, fueling the spectacle like a mob cheering an execution. Maya bent down quietly, gathering the belongings spilled from her bag. Her phone glowed brightly, screen cluttered with notifications. Reuters alert, Bloomberg breaking news, CNN request. Call after call flashed across the display, too many and too fast to read. Eleanor caught the light from the phone, but sneered. "Texting for help? Futile. No one here will believe a pathetic little nobody like you. Charles Rothell slammed his silver cane against the marble floor 3 times, the sound echoing like a verdict. "You have 2 choices. Leave quietly or be arrested for trespassing. Which will it be?" Every phone camera fixed on Maya, waiting for her to break, waiting for tears, for begging, for the collapse they all expected. Some even whispered, "She'll beg, just like all the others who get exposed." But Maya said nothing. She merely raised her head, glancing at her watch. 9 minutes left before the gavel struck the end of the auction. 9 minutes to decide. Bow her head or stand tall. Eleanor believed the game was over. Victoria believed her live stream would skyrocket her online career. Charles believed his political clout could crush anyone. James believed every security firm would bow to his word. None of them knew that in just a few minutes, everything they believed in would be reduced to ash. Because Maya was not just the humiliated one. She was the only woman in that room who could obliterate the entire Rothell dynasty using the very weapon they dismissed. The phone in the hand of the woman they thought was worthless. The sound within the grand hall swelled into a staged chaos. Chuckles, sneering remarks, and phones held high like hundreds of unfeeling eyes. Maya Lane Williams, the woman in the black dress now stained with chocolate, stood isolated at the eye of the storm. Eleanor Rothell lifted her chin, her Cartier bracelet glinting as if to carve a message into the air. "Anyone who dares to stand in the wrong place will be crushed." She flicked her eyes in command. "James, where is security? We cannot let this farce drag on with the auction about to begin." "They are on their way, Mother," James Jr. replied confidently. He turned his phone's camera on Maya as if capturing evidence. "This will be the face blacklisted from every major Manhattan event. Permanently." Victoria laughed brightly into her live stream, her tone laced with theatrical cruelty. "My dear followers, look at this. 75,000 of you are watching live, and right now we are exposing an intruder for what she really is." The comments exploded across her screen. "Check her bag. She looks exactly like a thief. Throw her out before she dirties the museum any further." Some comments dripped with racist contempt, brazen and vile. But Victoria didn't block them. She read them aloud instead, fueling the laughter that broke across the room. Maya heard everything. Each word stabbed like an icy blade, but her eyes remained steady. Her silence was mistaken for helplessness, but it was something else entirely. A calm before a strike, a preparation for an unseen counterattack. Senator Charles Rothell slammed his silver cane against the marble floor, each strike echoing like the drums of execution. "I have seen enough. In my 30 years of politics, I have encountered all kinds, and I know this type instantly. The kind who dreams, reads glossy magazines, then claws their way into places they do not belong, perhaps even running from a warrant." Murmurs spread. Some guests nodded, as if his words alone were judgment enough. Maya bit her lip gently, but her hand stayed steady as she wiped her dress. Eleanor stepped closer, her voice sharp as a blade. "This is the Met Gala, not a refuge for garbage. I will not allow my family's honor to be stained by someone who sneaked in through the back door." The head of security, a man seasoned by New York's darkest cases, studied Maya carefully. He had seen criminals cornered, and they always shouted, resisted, or tried to flee. But this woman, She stood still, as though she knew there was no need to run, because no chain in that room could bind her. Maya's phone buzzed again. On its screen flashed a call from a Washington, D.C. diplomatic line. The glow caught the security chief's eye. He felt a chill of instinct. This woman was not the easy prey they all imagined. Victoria turned back to her audience, shouting gleefully, "Oh my God, we're nearing 90,000 viewers. What do you all want to see next? Should we check her bag, or watch security drag her out?" The flood of comments came crashing in. "Search her now! Let's see what she's hiding. Arrest her." Eleanor smiled coldly. She turned to the head of security, her tone cutting. "Search her. Find anything: jewelry, wine, narcotics. People like this always hide something." Every gaze locked on Maya. Phones leaned closer, hungry for the moment of humiliation to be broadcast to the world. Maya felt the marbles chill beneath her heels, the crowd's cruelty pressing in like a noose. She lifted her eyes briefly to her watch. 6 minutes until the auction ended. 6 minutes, and the game would turn. For a fleeting second, she touched the phone in her bag. A decision was crystallizing. Eleanor, James, Victoria, Charles. 4 predators. Certain they had sealed every escape, did not realize that each insult they hurled, each image they captured, was nothing but another brick in the gallows they were building for themselves. Tonight, they thought they were the judges. But in only a few minutes, the entire hall would learn the truth. The woman they mocked was, in fact, the one holding the gavel. The sound in the grand hall had turned into a symphony of chaos, the silver cane striking the marble floor, mocking laughter, phones buzzing non-stop, and the venomous stream of cruel comments flashing across the live stream screens. Victoria shouted into her camera, her voice honeyed but dripping with poison. "Everyone, we've passed 100,000 viewers. This is the Met Gala, and this disgrace has just become the night's main attraction." The crowd roared with laughter. Some guests left their tables to move closer, eager for a better view, as if they were about to witness a grotesque fashion performance. Haute couture gowns shimmered alongside the spectacle of humiliation, camera flashes raining down on Maya's face. At the center, Maya stood unmoving. One hand held a chocolate-stained tissue, the other gripped her small clutch. Each breath she drew was slow and steady, a stark contrast to the frenzy around her. "Search her now!" Eleanor commanded, her voice like a cold blade. "Find whatever this girl is hiding. We need proof to end this farce." 2 museum security guards stepped forward, their faces tense, eyes uncertain. One looked to the head of security, a former NYPD captain, waiting for orders. But he stood still, his gaze fixed on Maya with suspicion. "What are you waiting for?" James Jr. snapped, eyes glittering with the intoxication of power. "I run dozens of private security firms in Manhattan. If you want to keep your jobs in this city, you'll do as we say." Maya lifted her head slightly, her eyes locking with the head of security. A flicker of understanding passed between them, unspoken but undeniable. Still, he remained silent, waiting to see what she would do. Meanwhile, Victoria screamed again. "Oh my God! The comments are exploding. They want to see security drag her out right now. Let's give the audience an ending they'll never forget." The live stream flooded with commands. "Yes, drag her out. Check her bag. She's a thief. This is real. Time drama at its finest. The torrent of words turned the online world into a frenzied jury, demanding instant punishment. Maya remained silent, but her phone vibrated again, harder, more urgently. The screen lit up, and for a brief moment, a name flashed. Pentagon Liaison Office. Missed calls. 87, 88, 89. The head of security caught a glimpse of it. His seasoned hands, steady through decades of police work, trembled. That name could never appear on the phone of a worthless intruder. But the Rothel family paid no attention. To them, she was only prey trembling before the kill. Charles struck his cane against the floor, barking orders. "No more delays. Drag her out before the police arrive. I will call the commissioner myself, and this will be escalated to a federal case. Believe me, I've been in politics for 30 years. I know how to make someone like this disappear from society." Maya raised her eyes, her gaze cold, slicing through the storm of camera flashes. She said nothing. No protest, no plea. Only slants, like the hidden fury of a storm beneath the sea. Eleanor smiled, savoring her triumph. To her, Maya's silence was surrender. "Yes," she murmured, just loud enough for those nearby to hear. "This is where you belong, in the trash." The hall roared louder than ever. Laughter, jeers, the pounding of Charles's cane like victory drums. Everyone believed the play was over, that Maya would be dragged away like a criminal. But at the eye of the storm, Maya glanced at her watch once more. 4 minutes until the auction ended. 4 minutes. And then, in that moment, she reached into her clutch and pulled out her phone. Not to call, not to shield herself. She simply lit up the screen and turned it toward the head of security. The instant his eyes caught it, the color drained from his face. His skin went pale. His eyes widened in shock, as though he had seen a ghost. He stumbled back a step. His voice hoarse. Barely audible but clear enough for all to hear. We have a serious problem." The words were quiet, yet they rang louder than the 100 voices in the grand hall. Viewers on the live stream heard it. Guests in the room heard it. And the Rothel family heard it too. In a heartbeat, the atmosphere flipped. Mockery turned to dread. The room froze, camera flashes stopped, laughter died. Maya said nothing. She simply held her phone out for all to see. And with that single motion, the world began to turn. A sharp clack rang out in the grand hall, small but chilling. The head of security's radio had slipped from his hands and struck the marble floor. The sound echoed against the vaulted walls, silencing the entire room as if someone had pressed a mute button. He bent to pick it up, but his trembling hand couldn't reach the device. His eyes remained locked on Maya's phone screen, glowing with a profile that cut like a blade. Forbes, Maya Lane Williams, net worth $3.2 billion. CEO, Meridian Aerospace Defense. He staggered backward, lips quivering as he whispered like a prayer. "Stand down, all of you, stand down immediately." The guards who had been closing in froze. They looked at one another, confused, then stopped moving one by one, as though they had just been ordered to retreat from a battlefield. The entire hall went silent. Guests who had been jeering now held their breath. Live streams shook in viewers' hands as the online audience struggled to process what they were seeing. The comment sections erupted in disbelief. What just happened? Did he just say stand down? Don't tell me she's OMG, the CEO? Eleanor Rothel still hadn't grasped the earthquake unfolding around her. She barked angrily, desperate to seize control. What are you doing? Why are you stopping? I ordered you to search her bag right now. But the head of security no longer looked at her. He turned instead to the museum director, his voice hoarse, his hands still shaking. Sir, you need to see this, right now. The director stepped forward, his cheeks flushed with tension. When his eyes fell on Maya's phone screen, he froze in place. His knees nearly buckled. His mouth opened, but all that escaped was a strangled gasp. Dear God, what have we done? A shockwave rippled through the room. Those nearby craned their necks for a glimpse. Some guests gasped aloud. Others who had been live-streaming in delight now frantically lowered their phones, scrambling to delete their recordings with trembling fingers. Victoria, still broadcasting, shoved her camera closer. Wait, what? No, this can't be. But the flood of tens of thousands of comments drowned her voice. That's her. Maya Lane Williams, CEO of the largest defense aerospace firm in North America. She just humiliated one of the most powerful people on the planet. The Rothel family is finished. Victoria froze. Her eyes darted between her phone and Maya, her face the picture of someone who had just detonated a bomb under her own feet. James Jr. forced out a laugh, his voice strained as though his throat were closing. No, impossible. This is fake. Someone in a cheap dress could never be. Maya finally lifted her head, her voice calm, yet cutting through the air with clarity. I don't need a diamond dress to prove my worth. It seems you do. The words sliced through the hall like a blade of ice. A few guests dropped their wine glasses, shattering on the marble floor. The truth was undeniable. Charles Rothel gripped his silver cane so hard his knuckles turned white. His voice shook as he tried to cling to a collapsing authority. Even if you are someone of importance, entering uninvited is still illegal. Maya did not answer. Instead, she swiped her phone to reveal another screen. A string of urgent messages filled the display. Maya, the Defense Department needs a decision on the $1.8 billion contract before midnight. Tensions in Taiwan escalating. Need immediate response. Joint Chiefs meeting rescheduled to 0800. Can you attend remotely? The hall seemed to lose all its air. Some guests cried out in shock. Others stumbled back, eyes wide with fear. The head of security, a man who had never flinched in the face of armed criminals, now bowed his head and spoke in a trembling plea. Mrs. Williams, please forgive us. We didn't know. Eleanor Rothel felt her legs give way. Decades of dominance in Manhattan's elite circles evaporated in seconds. She clutched James Jr.'s arm, trembling like someone staring into an abyss. Victoria dropped her phone, the screen shattering on the marble. But the live stream continued, broadcasting to more than 150,000 viewers as one of the city's most powerful families was toppled by their own arrogance. Maya didn't shout. She didn't argue. All she needed was a glowing screen and the truth. And that truth had torn away the mask the Rothel dynasty had worn for generations. In the heavy silence, Maya spoke at last, her tone steady and unyielding. You thought you were humiliating an outsider. In reality, you just fired a bullet into the heart of your own empire. And this was only the beginning. The vast hall fell silent. Where laughter had thundered moments before, now only uneasy murmurs remained, mixed with the pounding hearts of those who had just lost their grip on power. Maya Lane Williams stood tall, her eyes gleaming under the crystal chandeliers. She didn't need to shout. Her silence was enough to shake the room. Eleanor Rothel clutched her son's arm, her voice trembling, yet still straining to cling to some remnant of authority. This is just a misunderstanding. You can explain, can't you? Maya did not look at her. She slowly opened her black clutch, drew out a slim leather-bound folder, her fingers brushing the edge like a judge preparing to deliver a verdict. The sound of rustling paper echoed across the chamber, forcing everyone to hold their breath. "You want the truth?" her voice rang out, steady and razor-sharp. "Fine. I'll give you the truth." She lifted the first document high for all to see. The embossed logo of the Hamilton Rothel Foundation gleamed under the lights. Beneath it, enormous figures. $200 million, 5 years. Anonymous donor. Meridian Foundation. The crowd gasped. Maya paused, letting the sound ripple against the marble walls before she continued. The charitable foundation bearing your late husband's name, Eleanor, has survived only through my anonymous funding. Every scholarship, every hospital bed, every meal served at the soup kitchens. Without me, that legacy would collapse overnight. Eleanor staggered, as if the ground tilted beneath her feet. She clutched her Cartier bracelet, but its gleam now looked like nothing more than a glaring stain. Whispers surged again. Guests exchanged looks. Some shook their heads. Some covered their mouths to whisper. Phones streamed every detail, capturing each shifting expression. Maya turned to James Jr., who was still trying to salvage his bravado. She dropped another file onto the auction table with a resounding thud, like a gavel striking down. Rothel Industries' revenue last year, $2.1 billion. Of that, $847 million came from exclusive contracts with my company, Meridian Aerospace Defense. Nearly 40% of your revenue. James's face drained of color. He opened his mouth to protest, but Maya's voice cut through him like a blade. One clause in that contract, page 47, the ethics provision. I have the right to terminate immediately if my partner engages in conduct that damages reputation or violates core values. Today, she stopped, locking eyes with him. You signed the death warrant for your own company. The murmurs exploded into chaos. Guests gripped their chairs, eyes wide. Some had begun live streaming not to mock Maya, but to record history. A black female CEO dismantling an entire dynasty in the middle of the Met Gala. Victoria Rothel Sterling trembled, her hand shaking as her live stream continued. Maya glanced at her, then produced yet another file, stamped with the logos of luxury brands. Hermes, Tiffany, Bergdorf, Goodman. You live off image, Victoria, but I control whether those brands will continue to tie their image to yours. Meridian Capital, my investment firm, owns over 60% of the holding companies behind those luxury brands. With a single call, every one of your contracts disappears overnight. Victoria screamed softly. dropping her phone. The screen shattered, but the live stream carried on. Hundreds of thousands of viewers watched her unravel in real time. Maya turned now to Charles Rothel, the seasoned senator who had once threatened to turn this into a federal case, clutched his silver cane, his hand trembling violently. "Senator Charles," Maya said coldly, "I have funded $12 million for your campaigns across 6 elections. I backed you for your seat on the Defense Committee. I sponsored the military base in your state that provides 15,000 jobs. And tonight, with one wrong call, your entire political career could vanish into ashes." Charles opened his mouth, but no sound came. His silver cane slipped from his grip and clattered against the marble with a ringing crash. The hall held its breath. Every whisper died. Only one truth rang in everyone's mind. The Rothels, who moments earlier seemed untouchable, were now trembling before the very woman they had called trash. Maya gathered the files, placed them neatly back in her clutch. Her voice dropped lower, slower, yet carried across the room like thunder. "You thought tonight would be my humiliation. In truth, you have exposed your own corruption to the world. And I am here to decide each of your fates." The silence that followed was heavy as a falling hammer. Then, like lightning, the realization struck. The tables had turned completely. The one trapped was no longer Maya. It was the Rothel family who now stood at the defendant's bench. The grand hall of the Met Gala was silent to the point of dread. The mocking laughter from moments before had evaporated, leaving only the sound of heavy breathing, the rustle of ball gowns as society's elite stepped back, creating distance from the Rothel family, as though afraid of catching a plague in full outbreak. Maya Lane Williams closed the folder, her eyes sweeping across the 4 faces now pale with fear. When she spoke, her voice was not loud, yet it rang out like a bronze bell. "It is time for you to hear the verdict." Eleanor Rothel swallowed hard, still trying to salvage her authority. Verdict? This is a misunderstanding. Maya raised one hand, cutting her off. The entire hall went silent. The gesture was so commanding it silenced Eleanor, a woman accustomed to giving orders to hundreds of servants, leaving her as voiceless as a child caught red-handed. "Mrs. Eleanor," Maya began, her gaze cold as a blade, "you will issue a public apology across all social platforms within the next 24 hours. You will also resign from the 3 charitable boards you currently hold, with a letter explaining the reason: discriminatory conduct. Furthermore, you will donate $10 million to the NAACP within 48 hours. A murmur erupted. Guests clutched the arms of their chairs, trembling at the unprecedented sight of a New York social matriarch being forced to confess her sins in public. Eleanor shook, her eyes welling with tears. But Maya did not stop. She turned to James Jr. "And you, James Rothel Jr.," she said, each word striking like a hammer. "Within 12 hours you will broadcast a live apology to all employees and shareholders. Within 30 days, you will implement anti-bias training for all management. By the end of this quarter, you will appoint 3 qualified black executives to senior positions, and you will publish diversity reports to the public every quarter." James's mouth opened, but Maya slammed the folder onto the table before he could speak. "If you do not comply, I will terminate the $847 million contract immediately. Your company will lose 40% of its revenue, your stock will fall 70%, and your board will vote you out before winter arrives." James turned pale, sweat running down his temple. The man who once boasted that no company would ever hire you was now mute, staring into the abyss opening beneath his feet. Maya's eyes shifted to Victoria. The young woman who had reveled in hundreds of thousands of views was now trembling, mascara streaked with tears. "Victoria Rothel Sterling," Maya said slowly. "You will delete every video and within 6 hours release a sincere apology. For 1 year, you will dedicate your entire platform to promoting Black-owned businesses, and 100% of the revenue will go to a fund supporting minority entrepreneurs. The entire process must be transparent and public." Victoria sobbed, her voice breaking. "No, I can't. That's my career." Maya's tone was icy. "Correct. And I can end it in an instant. I control over 60% of the brands you work with. 1 call, and every contract vanishes. Your house, your car, your career, all gone like foam on the tide. Make your choice." Victoria collapsed in tears, covering her face, her phone slipping from her hand as the live stream continued to capture every second of her downfall. Finally, Maya turned to face Senator Charles Rothel. The man who had once brandished his silver cane as a symbol of power now hunched, hands trembling. "Senator Charles," Maya's voice was deep and steady, "within 30 days, you will testify publicly in support of anti-discrimination legislation. You will return the $12 million of my contributions to civil rights organizations with transparent receipts, and you will co-sponsor 3 major equality bills in Congress with direct involvement, not just your signature." Charles panted, trying to resist. You're demanding too much. Politics doesn't work this way." Maya stepped forward, her voice cutting like ice. "You have another choice. I will release every record of your campaign funding, every endorsement letter, every detail of the military base in your state. By tomorrow, the Senate Ethics Committee will summon you. That base will shut down. 15,000 jobs gone. Your career finished." The silver cane clattered onto the marble floor, this time with no strength left to pick it up. Maya stood firm, her gaze encompassing all 4 of them. The hall was so silent one could hear their own heartbeat. Then her voice dropped lower, yet each word struck like iron nails. "You have 60 seconds to choose. Compliance or ruin. Decide." The air was suffocating. Guests held their breath. The live stream exploded with millions watching, as though witnessing the harshest public tribunal of the century. In those 60 seconds, the Rothel family trembled, their eyes darting between one another until finally, one by one, their voices broke out, trembling. "I accept. I will do it. I agree. I commit." Maya gave a slight nod. Her lips curved into a cold smile, not of triumph, but of justice restored. In the very hall that had been their stage for humiliation, power had shifted completely. Spring sunlight poured over the streets of Manhattan, glinting off the glass towers, where news had reshaped the way the city understood power. 6 months after that fateful Met Gala night, the Rothel family was no longer a symbol of pride, but a living lesson in downfall and rebirth. Eleanor Rothel, who once commanded with a mere raise of her brow, now appeared on computer screens across millions of households. In her public apology video, she sat in her lavish Park Avenue apartment, her face pale, her eyes sunken, her voice trembled. I allowed privilege and arrogance to blind me. I humiliated a woman without knowing she was the benefactor of thousands of lives. My actions were inexcusable. I am sorry, and I will make it right. Moments later, a live statement of transfer was shown. $10 million wired to the NAACP. Undeniable proof. The press erupted. The most powerful woman in Manhattan bows before justice. Within a week, Eleanor quietly resigned from 3 charitable boards. She was seen at small forums, speaking about privilege and unconscious bias, with a humility she had never displayed. The crowds that once applauded her with adoration now looked with a mix of pity and curiosity. James Jr., the once brash CEO, now bowed his head before his own employees. In an emergency meeting broadcast live, he stepped to the podium, his voice heavy. My family acted with discrimination and insulted one of our most important partners. I apologize to every employee and shareholder. From this day forward, Rothel Industries will change. Anti-bias training began immediately. Hundreds of managers in tailored suits sat in silence as they listened to lectures on the history of discrimination and how prejudice seeps into everyday behavior. Confused eyes, flushed cheeks of shame. This was the first time Rothel Industries was forced to confront its own darkness. Then came the introduction of 3 new leaders: Dr. Patricia Williams, Chief Innovation Officer; Marcus Johnson, Chief Financial Officer; Angela Thompson, Chief Operating Officer. They stepped onto the stage at the announcement event to thunderous applause. For them, these were not just titles, they were proof that justice could carve its place into a fortress once thought untouchable. Victoria, the young woman who once lived for the flash of cameras and streams of followers, disappeared for weeks after the scandal. When she returned, there was no glamorous lighting, no makeup to hide exhaustion. In a simple phone, recorded video, her voice cracked. I used my platform to humiliate others, to encourage hate. I am no longer worthy of your trust, but I will spend the next year making amends. Every dollar I earn will go to the fund supporting minority businesses. My channel will only promote those who have long been overlooked. That video reached 23 million views in 3 days. At first, her followers abandoned her en masse. But slowly, they began to return. Not for luxury parties, but to watch Victoria sit in a small bakery owned by a black family, interviewing entrepreneurs usually ignored. Her clumsy sincerity, for the first time, made her believable. And then there was Charles Rothel, the senator once arrogant enough to pound his silver cane. Now he appeared on national television, seated in the Senate chamber, his voice low and steady. My actions and those of my family are proof of why the law must be stronger. No citizen, regardless of skin color or status, should ever be humiliated in public because of prejudice. The nation was stunned. 3 major anti-discrimination bills carried his CO, sponsorship, and fierce advocacy. The press called it the strangest transformation in American politics. These changes did not end with a single family. Corporations, seeing Rothel Industries nearly collapse, began auditing their ethical clauses. Museums, once wary of offending donors, launched training programs on dignity and fair treatment. And the media, who once reveled in filming Maya's humiliation, now replayed that story as a vivid moral lesson. In private conversations, many whispered, "That Met Gala night changed the industry." And everyone knew the force behind that earthquake was not a politician, not a corporation, but a woman once dismissed as trash in their eyes. 6 months later, America was still buzzing. But what no one expected was that the story did not end in Manhattan. It spread, crossing borders, becoming a global shockwave. Major newspapers ran the same headline: "The Rothel Rule, when family power becomes a corporate liability." CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera, Le Monde, all reported on the gala night that shook the elite world. In lecture halls at Harvard and Oxford, business and law students were assigned a new reading: Case Study. The Rothel Protocol. The document detailed how Maya Lane Williams forced the Rothel family to bow, and how personal ethical clauses in contracts could become strategic weapons. At the American Defense Business Association conference in Washington 70, 3 defense CEOs sat in silence as the report was presented. Since the Rothel incident, family ethics clauses have become a contract standard. Any misconduct by a leader's relatives may now result in immediate termination of contracts. An elderly executive stood and spoke heavily. "We are no longer in an age where only the numbers matter. From now on, the entire family of a leader must live by the standards. That is the lesson of Rothel." And then the domino effect began. In Tokyo, a tech conglomerate launched the Family in the Mirror policy, requiring board members' families to sign public ethics pledges. In Paris, the stock exchange added a new line under risk reports: family scandals. In Dubai, new investment funds demanded CEOs disclose the conduct records of relatives before signing billion-dollar contracts. People called it the Rothel Rule. Social media was not left behind. Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok simultaneously introduced new algorithms to block live broadcasts of discriminatory humiliation. In all moderator training sessions, they replayed Victoria Rothel's live stream as a classic case study. Red letters ran across the screen. "If any staff allows such a video to spread, they will be held personally accountable." This is the lesson from the Rothel case. The Metropolitan Museum, the very place that witnessed the humiliation, took one step further. Its board passed a new law. All donors, trustees, and gala guests must undergo training on dignity and fairness. No exceptions. One director said simply, "We will never let another Maya be humiliated within these walls again." The media called it the Maya effect. And Maya Lane Williams herself? She declined every sensational interview. She did not appear on glossy magazine covers in glamorous gowns. Instead, she worked quietly in a modest office on the top floor of the Meridian Tower, appearing only occasionally at closed-door conferences. In a talk with MIT students, she said, "True power is not in retaliation. True power is changing the system so that others will not endure what you endured." That quote was shared over 20 million times on LinkedIn and Twitter, becoming the slogan of a new movement: quiet power, global change. In business schools, students began referring to the Maya method, using economic power and contractual leverage to force the privileged to change their behavior. In politics, U.S. lawmakers cited the Rothel Rule as they pushed for new laws on transparency and fairness. Even Maya's rivals in the defense industry, who once mocked her, were forced to sit down and comb through every contract. One CEO admitted to the press, "I never imagined a fashion gala could change the entire defense industry, but it did." From New York to London, from Seoul to Cape Town, Maya's story became a global reminder. Arrogance can collapse in a single moment, and a woman once dismissed as worthless can change the world. That night, the Rothel family thought they were scripting the humiliation of an outsider. But 6 months later, the world had given a name to a new standard, etched from their disgrace: the Rothel Protocol. 2 years after that fateful Met Gala night, the city of Davos, Switzerland, was draped in white snow. Inside the main hall of the World Economic Forum, thousands of government leaders, CEOs, scholars, and activists from around the world sat in silence, waiting for one woman to step up to the podium. There were no loud flashes of cameras, no dramatic orchestras. Only a simple figure in a minimalist black dress, strikingly similar to the one once stained with chocolate 2 years earlier. Maya Lane Williams. Thunderous applause erupted, lasting nearly a full minute, but Maya only bowed her head slightly. When she spoke, her voice did not need to shout, yet it carried across the vast room with ease. True power is not loud. It does not need to boast. It does not need to shout its own name. True power builds systems that last beyond a moment, so that when we leave, justice remains. In the audience, many held their breath. Some recalled that live video from years ago, Maya standing in the middle of a hostile crowd, insulted and mocked, then turning the entire world upside down with nothing more than the light of a phone screen. That story had since become legend. At Harvard, the Maya Method course was now mandatory for MBAs. At Yale and Stanford, political science students dissected the Rothel Protocol as a classic case study. From South Africa to Singapore, hundreds of major corporations had adopted family ethics clauses into contracts. But more importantly, millions of ordinary people, employees who had been dismissed, small entrepreneurs pushed to the margins, women of color who had silently endured, now carried a new weapon: Maya's story. Eleanor Rothel, after her downfall, had written a memoir titled Unlearning Supremacy. In the foreword, she admitted, "Maya destroyed my ego so that I could rebuild into someone new. And for the first time, I am proud of that." The book sold millions of copies, with all profits donated to civil rights foundations. James Jr. was no longer CEO of Rothel Industries. He had left the seat of power to become a speaker on diversity management, recounting his own failure as a warning. At one event, he confessed, "Maya took away my power, but she gave me the chance to become a better man." Victoria, once a social media princess, was now a leading face in promoting minority-owned businesses. Her following surpassed 4 million, but audiences no longer came for glamorous displays of wealth. They came for authenticity. She married a civil rights attorney, and her projects generated over $200 million in revenue for minority businesses. Senator Charles Rothel remained in Washington, but he was no longer the shadowy power broker of political corridors. He had become the strongest bipartisan voice for equality legislation. In his recent re-election campaign, he won support from the very communities he once dismissed. On stage, he embraced his adopted granddaughter, a little black girl from the foster care system, and said, "This child reminds me every day that real change begins with admitting you were wrong." And Maya? Her wealth had surpassed $4.8 billion, but that was no longer what made the world pay attention. People called her many names, the woman who rewrote the rules, the architect of economic justice, the icon of quiet power. As her Davos speech drew to a close, Maya paused. Her eyes swept across the thousands of faces, politicians, CEOs, journalists, activists, and she asked softly, "How many times in your life have you been dismissed? How many times has someone looked at your appearance, your background, and decided you did not belong here? I have lived that moment. But instead of bowing my head, I chose to use it as a lever to change the system." The entire hall rose to its feet, applause thundering like a storm. Outside, the Davos sky was blanketed in white snow. But inside, a fire had been lit, the fire of a new legacy, the legacy of quiet power. And for the first time in decades, the world believed that justice was not a distant dream, but a reality within reach. If only someone dared to stand tall when the world demanded they kneel. The story of Maya Lane Williams was not just a dramatic reversal at the Met Gala. It was proof that justice can be built through intelligence, patience, and quiet strength. The Rothel family fell, but from their downfall, an entire system was forced to change. And the lesson for all of us is this: sometimes the most powerful weapon is not shouting, but calm resolve, data, and an unshakable belief in your own worth. If you believe that dignity is untouchable, hit like and subscribe so you do not miss the stories to come. And leave a comment with just 2 words: quiet power. Because it is that very choice to stand tall even when you are dismissed that has the power to change the world.